Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I call the meeting, the Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees to order. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to
Jen.
the flag of the United
Where?
States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
He's
for
working
all.
this.
Can't talk. Back.
Oh, turn that up.
Mrs. West, if you would
No.
do the roll call, please. Mr. Hay,
Here.
Mr. Mickelson,
Here.
Mrs. Thompson. Here. Mr. Batolo. Mr. Jackman,
Here.
Mr. Reedy,
Here.
Chairman Jellicoe. Here. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Second by Mr. Mickelson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We also have an item on the addendum, so I would entertain a motion to approve the addendum.
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. I'd now like to entertain a motion to go into the public hearing to amend the 2019-2020 budget. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. So we are in the public hearing to amend the 2019-2020 budget. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Superintendent McGovern. This is the time of year where we do some basic housekeeping in our books. That's what the nature of most of these items are. You'll see some budget increases and decreases. For example, if we get new grants throughout the course of the year, those would be a budget increase. And if we get final amounts, then we adjust those to what the actual is. Also, there's amendments to record the crossing of 1,000 level function codes. And that's because by statute, we have to stay in the same 1,000 level. If you cross those 1,000 level function codes, then it takes board approval to do that. And also the biggest driver of these adjustments are because the state requires that we keep to the function codes, like the 1,000 level function codes, whereas the federal government requires that we keep them by object code. That's to say the salaries, the benefits, purchase services, supplies, things of those nature. So a lot of times the grants have to move money into the right spot so they can spend them out, and then they end up crossing those function codes. So I won't go through every one of them, but there are some that I would like to point out specifically. So if you don't mind, Zach, on page 1 of the actual entry, yep, there you go, thank you. So the second entry, that's the reclassification and the transfers to the health insurance fund. And currently we are sitting at about 4 years of 15% year-over-year claims increases. And we're just starting to get in our estimates for our stop loss, and we're seeing some big lasers and also some increased cost. And so this transfer will help for offsetting those costs for next year. And when we're all done, we'll still be around 4 years of reserves, maybe just a little bit over. And this money is covered from the health insurance budget money that wasn't spent, as well as some salaries and benefits. And the grand total is a little over 4 million as a budget estimate. The next item down is for the reclassification and transfer for the capital projects fund. And these are to help fulfill the 5-year capital spending plans of, for example, the facilities, custodial, grounds, technology. So this is how we're able to do our computer and our iPad laptop refreshes every year. There's also some budget money in for transportation as they are responsible for maintaining our district fleet. So there's some vehicle replacements in there as well. There's also some for nutrition services. There's some for extra or additional vending machines, as well as for a replacement of one of their delivery vans. What is new this year is we've taken some of the building discretionary money that was not spent and moved those for their use over into the capital projects fund. And so what that does is it gives them a little more flexibility in their own building budget in the general fund, because they know that they've got some money earmarked that could go for equipment, for example, uniforms, those things that can come out of capital projects, and still keep their discretionary funding, their amount allotted in their general fund. So it does offer them a little more flexibility in how they can spend their money. And it also, helps them manage it a little bit more efficiently, because they know if they don't spend it in this year, they're not going to lose it. It's not going to be turned over to the general fund and disappeared, that it'll be set aside for them in the capital projects fund. And this money is covered from contingency money, unspent budget money. There are some salaries, benefits, utilities, supplies, technologies, things of that nature. And the estimated budget amount there is about 3.75 million, so 375,000. And so total between the health insurance and the capital projects, it's about 7.8.
So Mr. Duncan, if I'm understanding you correctly, then this, with the buildings having their own budget here, hopefully more efficient, and they will, since they know that they're not going to lose it, they will prioritize what they're spending it on. And if it needs to be spent in another year, then they would still have that money to utilize.
Yes, and it helps them plan, especially at the secondary level, helps them plan a little bit better, for example, for replacement of uniforms, because, it's sometimes hard to do, because a lot of times they have to wait and see if there's money in their budget for that year at the end of the year to go, grab that money to buy uniforms. So it will help that be planned out as well.
So it would actually allow them to plan those things more in advance and save up for it.
Yes.
If you will.
Yep. And what it will allow them to is, if we get cut severely from the legislature, that it will help them in their building budget, because they know if they need equipment, it can come out of the capital projects fund as opposed to their own building budget.
Thank you.
Okay, Zach, you go to page 3, please. Okay, so item C, the capital projects fund. So this is what I mentioned before. So this is the entry to record the transfer in from the general fund. And again, these are to fulfill the 5-year plans. And, we found it's a prudent way of, setting aside money for when things are tight. And it's a prudent use of the funds to have those scheduled out in those 5-year spending plans, if you will. There's also, I mentioned the district fleet. There's FF&E for the new satellite high school. There's money set aside for that, because typically the money that we get from the school facilities division does not cover our fully our needs for the furniture and equipment in a new building. I'm just going to cover copiers for next year. Is that right, Steph? I think we're on the slate to get new copier fleet next year.
Yes,
So
we'll go out to bid this year for that.
yeah, okay. So that's on the docket as well. Facilities, grounds, equipment, and again, also the building budgets from their discretionary funds. The next item underneath that, the first part is to correct an adjustment for the budget book. And the second part is setting money aside for the COVID equipment. And this was necessary because we had to place our order so we would hopefully receive them in time for school. And the federal money has not come in yet. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't even think they've opened up the grant just yet. So we had to set aside money here. These are mainly for the scanners. That we had to set aside money here so we were able to put those on order before the federal money comes in. Okay, Zach, can you go, yep, next page, please? So that third entry from the top, the one with the 351 fund code, that's the budget for the new satellite high school. So I thought I would just point that one out. A little over 16 million. The next item down, the enterprise fund, that is for the fresh fruits and vegetables grant, as well as the budget transfer into food service. And this is needed on the food service side because their budget for the transfer from the general fund was shown at 73,000. And in the general fund, the money that will be transferred, and it's on the list of warrants, will be 200,000. So that's just to match up the money going out with the money coming in. Then the last one, item F, can you go down just a little bit further? Thank you, Zach. That's the insurance fund, a little over 4 million, and that's the transfer into the insurance fund. Is there any questions?
Any questions from the trustees? Mr. Duncan, how did, I assume by now, May payments and so forth, were they about as expected?
They were a little bit short. I forget the exact percent. It was about 2%, I want to say. It's around 2 million.
Okay,
But the way that will work is we still had enough cash to cover our operations and enough to cover the retention incentive as well as the transfers for the health insurance and the capital projects. But usually the way it works in the funding formula, if your collections are less than what the estimated amount based on the valuations is, that comes to you in the following year in a tax shortfall grant. So we're hoping to be able to see some of that one-time money, come back.
so it's
to
made up
us.
by the foundation then?
It is, yep. And it also works the other way, that this is the second
Right.
year in a row where we've had a tax shortfall grant, but in years where you collect more, they actually
You have
take
to give
that
it
from
back.
you, so it reduces your budget. So it works both ways, but this year I think we'll be on the tax shortfall grant side.
Thank you. Trustees, any other questions of Mr. Duncan? Okay, I have no public comment regarding this part of the meeting, so I would entertain a motion to go back into the special board meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Jackman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr.
Second.
Hay. Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, we are back into the special meeting. And we are to the item number 7, the communications and correspondence portion of the meeting. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district website. So the first comment is from Jacob Lauterbach, who is a parent with students at Overland Elementary and East Side. His comment: in concern with online schooling, for our family, it is hard to come up with time to teach, being that us as parents both work full-time jobs to support our kids and pay our bills. I feel that our kids will not get the schooling that they need and deserve. Our students East Side needs special attention in some areas of schooling that we are not educated in giving to her. And during this homeschooling period for COVID-19, we really noticed she was missing out on the one-on-one teacher time. There has to be a better way for our kids to get the attention they deserve. I am not a trained teacher and neither is my wife. I hope there are more options out there. The second comment is from Megan Owens, also a parent. I am wanting to know who is on the reentry task force and when, how we will receive information about the meetings that are being held. And the final comment is from Danielle L. Schumacher, who is a parent and guardian. As a concerned parent, I am wondering what update the board and task force committee can provide to the parents regarding the reentry plan for the students this fall. More specifically, as a parent with children within the school system, I would like to know what resources are being utilized in making these decisions. How much weight is being given to the CDC guidelines? Is there consideration to what other states are doing? Will there be any consideration for the summer camps that are currently taking place where there are larger gatherings in close proximity and the outcomes of whether there are any outbreaks and/or need to stop or restrict those settings? Moreover, if not selected for this task force, how can a parent be involved in this plan? Will there be any public forum regarding input for the reentry plan from those who are not a part of the task force? Also, given constant updates regarding COVID-19, when will a final decision be made as to what the reentry plan will be? How much notice will parents be given during the school district's reentry plan? If the school is reviewing the CDC guidelines, will decisions utilizing those guidelines be updated along with any updates received by the CDC, since those have not been updated since May 19th, 2020? At this point, does it look like recess and/or PE and/or lunch in the cafeteria will be restricted? Is there any indication that a parent may have a choice in whether their child will utilize a face mask or face covering? What other restrictions are being considered regarding reentry into the school system? If attendance is down for reentry due to restrictions and parents electing a different option for schooling, will that affect a reentry plan or delay the plan, creating it to be in effect when attendance increases? Are there other options regarding school instructional time, such as homeschooling with a true criteria and not just a passing fail, or using the best grade for a quarter to apply toward our students' academic achievement? For those parents who do not agree with the district's reentry plan, is the task force considering any sort of waiver to allow parents to choose whether students may attend a quote normal end of quote school system or not utilize garments such as face masks or face coverings? I've asked Mrs. McGovern to address, since all three comments are related to pretty much the same thing, if she would just address all three at the same time. Thank
Sure.
you.
We've got lots of questions in there, so I'll do my best to try to put some concrete answers on a situation that is truly ever-changing as we speak. The task force had our first meeting last week on Wednesday. Today, the district sent out a parent square that provided a website address for all of the documents that were shared with the task force. So anyone at any time can go on there and see the agenda and the minutes. It lists the vision, mission, values, and goals for the task force, the members of the task force, and the representative groups while they are there. I think it's important too to mention that the response for the task force was overwhelming. And the large number of people that really wanted to be involved for that is truly humbling and says a lot about the support for our students and for our district as well. A little update about the first meeting. It occurred in our boardroom here that we're streaming from. We had the boardroom set up so that the members could actually visualize what social distancing really looked like. In a classroom, we had markings across the floor so that we could see what the square footage truly was like in an average size classroom, and that the tables we're sitting at here are actually 6 feet. So we could have one person on one side, one on the other. We also had buses out in front where members of the task force could actually go outside and load the buses see what it's like to have those Centers for Disease Control guidelines put into place, and how many students could actually load one of those buses, and what a dilemma the school district is really up against. What we will do to keep our community and our staff informed is, one, in the Parent Square, it has the website. Our next meeting is tomorrow, and we'll get all of the agenda and the other necessary documents uploaded on there as well for general information for that. Also, what's most important too is a survey that we sent out this afternoon for our community to take. It asks questions that I believe will help answer some of the questions Ms. Schumacher had asked in her public comment. The district does take a look at the Centers for Disease Control guidelines. Those are the recommendations for schools. But however, I think it's important to say that we're looking at what other states are doing, and that also what does our state health officer and our local county health officer recommend at this time. We know the current orders are in place through the end of this week. And so that footing for us is changing very quickly. And so we need to keep an eye on that. The process for the reopening plan, we have our last meeting scheduled for, I believe it's July 7th. We have one additional one on the 14th if we really need that due to time. But if all goes well, the last meeting will be July 7th, with the idea being that by July 9th, we could send that out again to our community for public comment and for feedback. And then with that, at the July 15th board meeting, we would be able to present to the Board of Education the work of the task force, and then the recommendation that I would have moving forward for our Board of Education for the reopening plan. The task force is not a decision-making group. They are really input and feedback, things that as representatives and stakeholders that we make sure that we consider. We know that art, music, library, PE, recess, lunch, being with their friends, mental health, as well as the instructional needs of our kids, those are all very important things. And so we want to make sure that our community understands that we hear you loud and clear, and we agree with that very much so. We want our kids to come back to school. We just want them to be safe and put in measures that are the very best that we can do as a school district for that. If the board should choose to approve that reopening plan, we also need to know that that recommendation for what is that going to look like on August 17th, that very first day of school, that most likely will not come until we get much closer to that August 17th date. What that reopening plan does is it gives a framework so that should that situation change frequently, we would know what options and the process and plan are put into place so that we can change and pivot quickly as we need to. But that final of what is that going to look like for August 17th, I believe we're looking at health data. And again, that would come from our state health officer as well as our local county health officer as we move forward. For our parents and community and for our teaching staff, we know that we've got to get options out there for you. If it looks like this is what the outline might be. If we had to do option B, here's what it might look like. We know there's lots of things to consider. There's childcare for our families. We know our parents need to work. And those are essentials. We understand that. Those are valid things that we're looking at. So we know that information needs to come as quickly as we can. It's difficult to maneuver through. The district will do well, and we will take care of our students and our staff and try to get that out as soon as possible. It's a tough situation to move through, but as much concrete information as we can provide, our district will surely do that.
Thank you, Superintendent. Okay, moving to item number 8, classified salary schedules. 8A is the nutrition services. 8B is the business office. I would entertain a motion to approve those two salary schedules.
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Reedy. Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman?
I guess my one is, I know that we as a district promised, or as a board, kind of promised that third step to the teachers. And as far as I know, how are we doing with that, Scott? Because I do believe these salary schedules need updated for sure, but
Yep, that is baked into the preliminary budget for next year, that as well as a step.
excellent. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the nutrition services and business office salary schedules, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Nay. The motion passes. Warrants, item number 9. Mr. Jackman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Give me just a second to grab my packet. So warrants from June 5th, 2020 to June 23rd of 2020 were check number 137547 through 137820, totaling $3,821,732.77 and associated bank transfers.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the warrants?
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. A second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 10, the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion, unless members of the board request specific items to be held and discussed separately and/or removed from this section. Finance, 10A, approval to accept the budget amendments for 2019-2020. 10B, approval of the white copy paper bid for the 2020-2021 school year. Personnel, 10C, approval of personnel recommendations. Technology, 10D, approval to renew Dreambox licensing. 10E, approval to renew Frontline licensing. 10F, approval to renew Dude Solutions. 10G, approval to renew IXL Learning. 10H, approval to renew Optimizon. Okay, I did not hear any items held, so I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Go to the addendum. I would entertain a motion to approve the maintenance salary schedule for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second. Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the maintenance salary schedule, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 11 is the board self-evaluation. I'm going to give a little bit of a pretext to this, and trustees feel free to comment as well. The board self-evaluation comes from the leadership governance that the board has been working on for about a year now. The board has treated this leadership governance as basically their PLC, for their professional learning community. Much like the certified staff have their PLCs, the administration has a PLC, the board used this opportunity to learn and grow, and it's a continuous training for trustees. And so that's what this process started out to be. The board documents, the board actually created documents on December 9th that was approved on December 9th of 2019 and sent to policy committee. The purpose of sending it to the policy committee was not the usual approval that the policy, but it was more to educate both our staff and the community as to what we were doing. So that's a little bit of a introduction into what the board self-evaluation, what the purpose of it is. As with any kind of evaluation, the purpose of evaluation should be reflection and improvement, so that you look at the past, what went well, maybe what didn't go so well, and how do we improve on that. So would any of the trustees like to add anything to that? We spent a good seven months from, I believe, June last year through December with multiple workshops working on it to get to the documents that we created. So does anyone have anything to add? Okay, hearing none, then the second part of the process is this board self-evaluation. And the tool is made up of two parts. There's an individual assessment that each of the trustees can look at and assess to themselves. If they want to share it, they can. But basically decide what, how they feel about their role. The second part is a whole board assessment, which is made up of 13 categories. And those categories include 1, general board as a team; 2, the board superintendent relationships; 3, policy; 4, meetings; 5, planning; 6, instruction; 7 is budget/finance; 8 is personnel; 9, labor relations; 10, student services; 11, facilities, transportation, and food services; 12, community relations; and 13, board member orientation and professional development. So with this being the end of the 2019-2020 school year, as well as the end of the fiscal year, my suggestion is that we take these items, there are 13 categories, that we take these 13 categories and plan out the next 2 or 3 months and look at one of these categories per month. And we could do the evaluation, have the discussion and so forth, and then move forward. Some of the evaluations, if we look at budget and finance, we've gone through a rather rigorous 2 or 3 months with the budget process that we've been going through. Next month's meeting on July 15th is basically a budget hearing as well as we move into the new fiscal year. And so perhaps that one, to be timely, maybe we could look at that one in August or September, as far as so that it's a kind of a appropriate time to be looking at that. As we look at labor relations, maybe we would want to look at that maybe sometime after negotiations. So there are some of these that may be more appropriate during a certain time of the year than others. So my point with the discussion tonight is to find out your thoughts, and if we're in agreement that we want to move forward with this in kind of a step-by-step approach. Obviously, with 13 categories, at some point we're going to need to do 2 one evening at one meeting. But again, my suggestion is that we take the regular meeting each month and take one of these categories and go through it, so that we're not spending over amount of time, but clearly we want to look at what we're doing and how we can improve on that. So comments from the trustees.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman?
would you want us to propose a calendar and just, what do you?
I think if we look 2 or 3 months out,
Mhm.
and then, we can add something as we go along. If we need to make an adjustment, we can, but that way it would give us an opportunity to focus on one area. I mean, 13 areas to cover all in one night. I think it's for me, it would be probably more beneficial to focus on one of the areas, set up the schedules. Let's say we set up July, August, September, and then maybe in August, we can add a couple more months to it so that we're always planning ahead. But at the same time, we're going to be able to get through these areas in the period of the year. That's my thought. So
Makes sense.
any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mickelson?
I just would say that I'm very excited for us to start on this process, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Does anyone have a suggestion about which one we want to tackle first?
I like the plan with the budget. I think we should start there since it's fresh in our mind.
Start with the budget and finance in
Yeah.
July rather than wait till August?
I'm fine with it in July if everyone else is.
Okay. Any opposed to that? Okay, then we'll put budget and finance for July. That'll kind of keep in with the whole purpose of the meeting that night. Okay?
I'd also recommend maybe transportation after school starts, because that's usually we approve the bus routes. After it's started, we'll have a little bit better idea of how that's running.
Usually we approve those bus routes in August, do we not?
They'll actually come before the board in July. That way parents will get the reopening plan and bus routes. They'll be able to plan ahead.
Okay, so are you suggesting maybe that one in September?
Yeah, I think that would be a good time.
Okay. So we'll look at facilities, transportation, and food service in September. Okay. Something for August.
I'd say either planning or student services.
Do you have a preference?
No.
Okay. Okay, why don't we do planning in August? And let's make the student services the October one. How does that sound?
Sure.
Okay, that gives us 4 months planned out. And then come August, we'll take a look at adding a couple more, because there's no particular order that we need to do these in. So as far as the process, as you looked at it, because we did include the tool in the packet, there's a checklist, there's a number of questions that you rate. So as far as the process, perhaps since we know in advance what the topics are going to be, because we'll put into the board agenda what the topic is going to be for that. My suggestion is to add a board self-evaluation, and then we'll itemize what that is for that month. So it'll be on the agenda as a reminder. And then if you would do that rating for that particular category and send it to me, shall we say, meeting would be on a Monday, by the Wednesday previous? Would that give you enough time to get that in and send it to me via, however, you could either send it to me or Mrs. West maybe, to make it easy? Okay, and that'll give us a time to combine it, and then we'll have a discussion at the board meeting. Does that sound like a plan? I don't know that we need a motion to do that, but I think it's just the planning piece.
Carol, I do have one question.
Sure.
The guy that came into the workshops, I don't remember his name. He used to be the superintendent in Green River.
Mm-hmm.
He suggested or talked about having the administrators of the district rate us as well. Is that something we want to tackle, or we want to push it off for a year and see how this goes internally?
Um, I think, this is really new to all of us.
Mhm.
And I think maybe if we take a look at how we approach it, and then maybe next year we invite them to take part in that, maybe, I'm open to it, but I'm thinking before we get too deep into it, we need to feel it out a little bit ourselves.
I would agree with that.
And part of this is developing trust among ourselves and administration. I might add that the whole point of the leadership governance is that the trustees and the superintendent work as a team, and so the documents for the leadership governance actually stipulate the superintendent responsibilities and then the board responsibilities. So it kind of keeps us as a board looking at the various parameters from the 20,000-foot level, okay? Whereas the superintendent is delegated with the operations and the day-to-day functioning of the district. So that's kind of the general, but there are a list of all of the items that broken down, and it's not exclusive, but it does separate the duties and responsibilities pretty plainly. So, and maybe what we could do is also make that part of the agenda as well as the evaluation piece corresponding to it. And maybe we could educate, since it didn't get through policy yet, and that was the point of policy, was trying to get the education piece, maybe we could do a little bit of both.
Okay.
By doing it this way.
Sounds great.
Okay? Any other comments? Okay, then we will include that, beginning that in July, and start with our self-evaluation that way. Okay, item number 12. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of legal and personnel matters. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I would make that motion, and if possible, I do have a sort of a side comment, if I may.
Okay. Regarding the executive session, or do you want to make a comment first?
It's not before the executive session, please.
Okay, Mr. Mickelson.
Sorry, thank you. I just think it's really important for everyone to realize that while our district is working very hard to come up with a plan and tackle the issues surrounding COVID, the district and all districts and the state, in fact, are constrained by state and federal law. And so there are a lot of things that we could do or other districts could do that would be wonderful if we're given the flexibility under state law and federal regulation, and that we are not always free to make the choice that we might like to, or the community might like us to, because we are not in fact empowered to change statute. And I just think that's really critical for people to understand. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mickelson, you're also on the state task force, are you not?
Yes, I am.
So you're living that at the state level as well.
Yeah, and the state is working very hard to get guidance on how they can find some flexibility, because the reality is the statutory changes that are necessary to allow for things like if a parent does not feel comfortable sending their kid to school under current statute, not feeling comfortable isn't a reason to keep your kid home. And so they're trying to find ways to allow districts to do that without harming the district or the student.
And I think I mentioned at the last meeting that I had listened to the Joint Education Committee meeting that was held a couple of weeks ago. And Superintendent Balo, State Superintendent Balo, had actually brought to their attention that there may need to be some statutes worked on so that they could look at some competency-based credits instead of it all centering around seat time or a certain amount of time that a student has to be in class. So the state's looking at that from that perspective as well. I will also add that this Wednesday and Thursday, the Special Committee for Recalibration will be meeting in Cheyenne. It too will be a virtual meeting, but this is, there will be a look, I think, at the basket of goods. This is the funding model that we get from the state. So They will be in session Wednesday and Thursday. So that meeting is then. Okay, any other comments from the trustees? Okay, then we'll go back to the motion. Mr. Mickelson made a motion. Is there a second to go into executive session?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, then we are in executive session for the purpose of legal and personnel matters. We do not anticipate any action being taken upon our return. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to return from the executive session.
So moved.
Okay, it's been
There.
moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion passes. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved to adjourn. Any, a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jackman, second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.